Hello guys, Alan here and welcome to the most authoritative Revit tutorial channel you can ever find on YouTube. And in this video we are kind of like just bringing out our final part in our material library series. So in our previous episode, let me just get into my material library by heading straight into the manage tab and then clicking on that material icon right there. So in our previous series, we're just going to have a little recap. In our previous series, we talked about all the shading, the surface pattern, and then we talked about the cut pattern as well. So these parameters are just divided into two, which you see right there. We have the surface pattern in here, and then we have the cut pattern also in here. Now, I think the only thing I failed to talk about was this texture alignment. I'm going to show you guys what that is. Let me just filter everything out to masonry brick, and I think I'll have to change my icon there to some sort of like, let me change it to a brick. Let me head in there. Let me look for a brick icon. Okay, this is perfect. So this is perfect. Now let me head into appearance tab. All right, so this is perfect. Relief pattern is in there. Now with the texture alignment, it's just for you to be able to align this pattern you see right there to fit exactly with the image you see in your appearance asset. All right, so let me explain what that is. So we just have to click on that, and then when you click on that, you're going to have this. Let me just open that up a little bit. Okay, so you're going to have the pattern of our brick in here, this surface pattern you see right there, and then you can just kind of move these arrows in there. I don't know, I can't enlarge that any bigger, guys. This is how big this can get. All right, so things are going to move really quickly from a simple mathematics to rocket science. So we are going to start off perfectly. So now this is just the image of the texture alignment in there. So when you click right there, you're going to see you have this image there. Okay, I can't get into my appearance asset. So you see the image you have on this, your appearance asset in there, right? So with this pattern right there, you're gonna kind of like want to be able to align that texture in there, align that pattern to fit exactly with your image in your appearance asset. All right, you want to make it a little bit realistic. So that is what this texture alignment is for. So when you feel you're okay, you can click on the OK button right there. So in this video, I'm going to want us to create a new material. I want us to create a material we'll be using for our purpose of this video today. So we're going to start off by creating a material. Now I'm going to create a wood material today. I'm going to create a wood material. So now let me just filter this out all the way to all. Now in creating a wood material, or in creating any material you want in Revit, so let's say I want to create a brick material. All right, so now the one thing you need to do is you need to make sure you find a material that is closer to the material you're about to create. All right, so if I want to create a brick material, I know I have, when I go into my masonry tab, I have a brick material here, so I can just right click right there and then I can duplicate that. All right, because what I'm creating is closer to a brick material. All right, so now let's say I was creating a textile material. All right, yes, so I'm going to make sure I find a material already existing in Revit that is closer to what I was going to create. All right, so if I go into the textile, I have carpet in there, and then I can just duplicate that. Now the reason for doing this is that when you click on that material, all right, I told you not every material you see in Revit has the same parameters as every other material. All right, some materials have different parameters, especially when you go into the appearance tab. All right, so you can see in the carpet material, with the parameters we find in our appearance asset, we have a lot of parameters we can play around with in there. So when I want to create a glass material, all right, and I select this glass material, you notice we don't have too much parameters in there. All right, so I'm going to create a wood material, so I'm going to make sure I find a material that is closer to the wood material I'm about to create. So I'm going to click on my wood material right there, and I'm just going to select anything. I'm going to go with the oak flooring. All right, I'm going to select the oak flooring. I'm going to select my oak flooring in there, and let me just find some wood material with a lot of parameters in there. So with the cherry, I don't have too much parameters in there. Let me go with the stained. Okay, all right, so I see finished unused in there. So this has a lot of this thing in there. All right, so I'm going to go for the cherry instead. I'm going to go for the cherry in there. So I'm just going to extend this, open this up a little bit in there. All right, so this is perfect. Now what you have to do now is you have to duplicate your material. All right, so we can just make sure we select it, and then we come in here, and we come in here, and then we click on duplicate selected material. So we are not going to do that. We can just right click, which is the easy way, and then we can just duplicate that material in there. So I'm going to call this I'm going to call this AA underscore, or just hyphen wood material in there. I'm going to call this AA wood material in there. So we have that wood material duplicated in there. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on that, and I have it in there. Now you notice our palm has 1 on top of it, which means that there's another material inside of Revit using the same material in here, or the same parameters, or the same assets in here. All right, when we go into the physical, you're going to see the same thing. All right, and when we head straight into the thermal, you're also going to have the same thing in there. So what you want to do is we are going to head back into the appearance asset, and what we are going to do is we are going to make sure we duplicate it. All right, so that any change we make in here doesn't affect the other copy of this material, which is this cherry you see in here. So I'm going to duplicate it, and after duplicating, you notice palm here is gone to 0. All right, which means that no other material inside of Revit is using the same asset, appearance asset in there. All right, so you have to do the same thing for the physical as well. Make sure we duplicate that, and then go to the thermal and also duplicate that. Now we won't be working in the thermal and the physical assets. We won't be working in there much, so we won't be doing any changes in there, but it's very important that you duplicate it in case you should share the file with anyone that's going to work with it. It doesn't affect any other stuff in there. So we head back into the physical. We won't basically touch anything in there. I think my entire life working in Revit, I've not ever come into this physical and thermal asset to do anything. I'm mostly in the appearance asset. All right, so now with the appearance asset, we are going to make some changes in there. We are going to kind of create our wood material we want. Now I want to change my scene. All right, I want it to have let me just use a canvas. Let me start with a canvas. So this is what you're going to get when you're using a canvas scene. All right, so this is what you're going to get in there. Now there are several ways we are going to change this image you see in there. Now there are several ways we can do that by just clicking on this link right there, and then you can go into the material library images of Revit, which is going to be installed in your machine. So you can go in there, and then you can change that image in there as well. But another thing you can do is you can click on this image, and then you go straight into the texture editor. All right, so you can click on this image, and then we go into texture editor, and then we can click on this source right there to also change that image in there. All right, so this is another way you can also do that in there. So you can just click on this link below to change the image, or you can click on it to head into the texture editor, and then we can click on the source to also change the image in there. So now I have a wood image downloaded on my desktop, and I'm going to show you guys how you can also download your image that you can use personally for this tutorial. You can use for your material, any kind of material you want. So I'm going to click on my source in there, and then I'm going to find my material. I saved it on desktop, and I think I didn't place it here. I placed it in the graphiato, and I'm going to go into wood and select that wood image in there. So now you notice our wood image has a scale of 254 by by just 254 mm by 254 mm, which is a square image in there. So let me just kind of open this up a little bit. Okay, so now it's very important that you make sure you have like the right scale for your images. All right, you make sure you have the right scale. Now this is one way you can actually achieve that. All right, so I know for a fact that the length of this wood is 200 mm. So I know if I have, so you are going to make a rough measure. You should be able to make a rough measurement. All right, so I'm going to assume this is 200 in there, and then I'm going to assume this is let me give it 800. Okay, so I'm going to assume this is 300, and then I'm going to assume this is 600 in here. With this is 600, and then I'm going to assume this is 100. So I'm going to have a scale of one, so all making 1,000 millimeters. All right, so you make sure you change the scales in there. So now there are a lot of parameters. Make sure you check the scale. I'm going to explain this. So now there are a lot of parameters in here you can play along with. So with the brightness, you can decide to reduce the brightness if you want, or you can just input a figure in here to change the brightness. You can invert the image if you want, but most of you guys are not going to use that, are not going to touch that unless otherwise. So now with the scale side in here, you can see we have the 254 mm in there. So I'm going to want to keep everything at 1,000 millimeters in there. Okay, so this is perfect. Now you notice when I input the 1,000 millimeters in there, it changed automatically in the height as well. All right, so with the height, we can decide to keep it, since it's a box image, we can leave it at 1,000. Now the reason why it changed also in the height is because of this aspect ratio we have in here, the constraint aspect ratio in there. So you can decide to click on that and it locks it in. So anything you change for the width also changes in here as well. And with the repeat horizontal, you can keep it at tile. And I'm going to be showing you guys what it means by none as well. So you can make sure that is also at tile. And then we've changed that image in there as well. So now I told you guys, when you're scrolling up, you should be careful, because when you tend to scroll up in there, it's kind of like increasing the offset positions in there. So we want to keep that at 0 in there, which is perfect. Now we can click on done in there, and we are going to scroll down. We are going to uncheck this thing right here. We want to uncheck that, and we can just raise this up a little, so we can change the production quality, which is going to render that image in there for us as well. So we can change this to a glossy vanish or a satin vanish. So I'm going to keep mine at a glossy vanish in there, and with the used for is going to be used for a flooring. So you can decide on whatever you want to choose in there. So if it's going to be for a furniture, you can click on the furniture. If it's going to use for a flooring, you can go for a flooring. So I'm going to use mine for a flooring in there, and with the relief pattern, we can check that in there as well. We can make it based on wood grain or custom. All right, so you can use the based on wood grain. You can give it an amount of relief pattern in there. So this is perfect. This is okay. And with the tint, you can actually add a tint in there as well. And this is done for our wood material in there. So we are done with our wood material. I would have wanted us to be able to add a bump, all right, a relief pattern, all right, which we would want to put our image in there. But with this family that we duplicated, it's not giving us that parameters in there. So let me just search for a default wall. Let me search for a default wall in there. All right, so I've in there. Let me just go back. Default wall. Maybe just default material. All right, make sure you get a default material in there, and let me just get a default one. Let me click on this and see what they have. All right, so this is much appropriate. All right, this gives us more parameters in there. All right, this gives us more parameters in there. Okay, so this is perfect. So with this, I'm going to go into reassign. All right, I'm going to go into the reassign. So it means that I'm going to assign a different material asset in there. All right, so I'm going to assign a different material asset. I can decide to search for that asset in there. So I'm going to use the default one, and then I'm going to put in my material in there. I'm going to put in my material myself in there as well. We have the wood, we have the wall glass. Okay, so we can come in here, we can click on that, and we can just load this inside of our software in there. So assigned that inside of our material in there. So we need to bring back our image and just place our image in there. This is perfect. Now I'm going to change this scene. I'm going to want to use the same. I'm going to want to use the same canvas in there, and I'd want to check my source and all that. So just click on that, and then I can change that scale in there, so I can keep it at 1000, and this is perfect in there. And I can just come down with the reflectivity. With the reflectivity, you can make sure you can check that. All right, and with the transparency, I'm not going to check that because I don't want it transparent. With the cutouts, you can also do that, but I'm not going to check this. And with the bump, I'm going to check that, and then I'm going to use this wood bump image I have in there, and then I'm going to load that into the software. So I'm going to click on done, and then it's loaded up into the software. So we can decide to add a bump in there. Now you notice our rendering image right here, our thumbnail image right here, is kind of looking a little off. All right, so we would want to make sure it's because of our bump in there. So we can click on that and make sure we change the scale for that as well. Let's just make sure we change that scale in there. All right, so it's looking good now. So we can click on this and we can just call this 40. Let's give it 40, and this is fine. Okay, so we've reassigned that material in there as well. So hit on apply and hit on OK in there, and we are good to go. So let me just head in here and let me just place that material on the surface of that wall right there. So edit type, get into those 3 dots right there, and then we are going to find our AA. All right, so this is that material right there. So we're going to click on use render appearance, hit on apply, hit on OK, hit on OK, hit on apply, hit on OK in there. So this thing is in there, our material is in there, but we can't see that in there. So we're going to change that to consistent colors. We can see that, and we are going to look at, send this to realistic, and we are going to have that in there. All right, so we have a glossy finish, a reflective finish. All right, so this is what we are going to have if you are using that material in there. So this is how we create our own materials inside of Revit. All right, so this is how you can create your own material in there. So I can just click on that, and let me just get back into the manage tab, get into my material library, and heading back into my appearance asset. With the reflectivity, I'm going to uncheck that, click on OK in there, and you can see, so we have that in there as well. So you can get into the ray tracing. All right, so we don't have our ray tracings in there. Okay, it's taking a while to load. I think I kind of turned on the shadow in there, so it's taking a while to load up. All right, so this is perfect. So we have our shadow in there as well. So this is the material you have inside of Revit. All right, so we can take this and we can keep this as shaded, and it's going to have that brown color in there, and realistic kind of brings us out. So if we should use an external rendering software like Enscape, it's going to come out more nice and more unique than this. All right, so now some of you guys are going to ask me how I'm able to get these images and using for my material library. All right, it's very simple. So you can head straight into Google, And when you head straight into Google, to make the work easier, you can just search for a wood, let's say a wood seamless texture. All right, so when you head straight, you can use the wood seamless texture. And when I head into images, you are going to have a whole lot of wood images in there. So one thing you can do is you can just download that, but some of them we need to make sure you have the free ones, because you might be doing a copyright content in there, so you can make sure you get the free ones. Now Google has this in there, which we can use this tool in there. I learned this from Balkan Architect, so you can just click on that and you can just change the size. So with the size, you can go in there and kind of like be specific in there. So you notice the images in there have their sizes in there. So I can go for large, and some of them will have their sizes written beside it at the bottom in there, like 512 by 512, which is a square image. So you're going to have those woods in there. So let's say if I want to use this wood, you can just click on this in there and you can see it's large. So you can just right click and then you save the image on wherever you want to save. Now you should make sure it is a JPEG file, all right, or a PNG. All right, so you should just make sure it's a JPEG file before you can be able to put that inside of Revit and then use that in your material library in there. So I'm going to put this away. So this is how you can do that. All right, so you can search for anything. So let's say a stone material, and then you can get that in there as well. All right guys, so this is it for this material library course. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't liked and subscribed to my videos, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be bringing out more tutorials like this in Revit, and we're going to move on to the next series inside of Revit. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. I'll catch you guys in the next series. Peace out.
I'm still working real hard on a Saturday. A future I don't see from a mile away.